Welcome to the HerStory Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Getrude Matshe, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is HerStory, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the HerStory Circle. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
My name is Kelly Cox. I am here today in Charlottesville, Virginia. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and kind of traveled around during grad school and figured I would live there the rest of my life. And then I landed in this sweet little college town in the mountains of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia, and it has been home for 19 years. I am a registered prenatal yoga teacher. I am a birth doula. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I have never, ever had children. I never considered having children. However, I'm somehow immersed in this child rearing support of families career. I started my career as a licensed clinical social worker. I worked with victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. I then left that profession and I opened a prenatal yoga studio here in Charlottesville. Always kind of approaching my clients with a more therapeutic hat on. So prenatal yoga is fantastic to kind of keep the body healthy during pregnancy, prep moms for labor. But really, I was focused on their depression, any anxiety they had about infertility in the past, any losses they had, what they were worried about in particular with childbirth. And then, of course, that first year or two in postpartum. So as a doula and a woman who interfaced with pregnant women all the time and new mothers, I became very attuned to the stress, anxiety, depression that kind of wraps around how we feed our babies. We have, especially in the US, this kind of great campaign that breast is best. Well, not everyone can produce breast milk. Not everyone can produce enough. And so I found clients really struggling if they had extra, they wanted to donate to other people. They found the process of formal milk sharing, going through banks and getting blood tests and having to go make trips back and forth was very cumbersome. And for those who were seeking milk, I would often refer them to Facebook groups to go kind of ask to be let in. It was all volunteer run. The process was very clunky. And of course, these parents were struggling with feeding their children. And so it was through that I started to be keenly aware of the need for informal milk sharing. And then after I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017, other survivors just kind of came out of the woodwork asking me, like, how am I going to feed my baby once I get pregnant? And I just started thinking about making this a little simpler. So I created Share the Drop. It is a mobile and web-based app. We connect any woman who has excess breast milk to any family that needs it. So I don't want families going through the time and the expense of packing up milk, shipping it somewhere, paying for that. My app uses zip codes. So when people go on, either a donor or a recipient, when they go on to create an account, they put in their zip code. And my hope is that they can meet someone in their own neighborhood, down the street, someone, across the city, and then meet, connect, talk about all the questions you need to talk about if you're going to take someone's breast milk, and then start to build community. I'm a big believer that community is really what serves us all. It's very the world can be very isolating, very lonely. And we don't really live in big community with our families anymore. So when new mothers come home with the baby, they might not have granny, auntie, sister next door, but there are neighbors. And so my hope is that you can connect on this app and then get to know someone, build a little army of support, because those first couple of years of raising babies can be isolating and very lonely. And we are constantly being thrown messages about what you should do. You should do this. You should do this. This is the best way. And the process of informal milk sharing is really a peer-to-peer informed consent process. If women have excess to give, it's been my the history of me working with those women. They do it altruistically. They understand how valuable their excess is. Their babies are thriving, gaining weight, meeting developmental milestones, and it is really sad often for moms to have excess and not know where to give it. And then on the other hand, if you are having trouble with your supply, you might have to go back onto a medication that might affect your breast milk. You have to go back to work. We don't have the best postpartum maternity care here. And so oftentimes moms have supply issues when they leave that child and go back to work. And then, of course, breast cancer survivors, same-sex couples, people who adopt babies and don't have access to breast milk. Some infants are being raised by other family members who don't have access to milk. And so we are kind of the in-between option between exclusively breastfeeding and going to infant formula. So one thing to be really clear about, I have never been pregnant. I have clearly never had a baby. I have never breastfed. However, I have learned from the community around me. I am circled with mothers all the time. They tell me everything. As their doula, I am kind of their go-to, their therapist, the counsel, the calling at 3 a.m. What is this? What can I do? Is everything okay? And so they've taught me that the being pregnant, the giving birth is the sprint. The big marathon for parents is that first year of life. It is extremely time consuming to care for a baby. Oftentimes parents are struggling with sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is an actual torture technique we use. And so these parents are not sleeping, making sure the baby's okay. That's kind of their one focus. And if having this platform, Share the Drop, can alleviate some of that stress, that's what we're here for. We launched in July of 2020, when in the United States, we were in the midst of a huge formula recall. There were several brands that got pulled from the market. And at least in my community, I was getting messages constantly about sending me a picture of this formula. Can you go ahead and find it for me? And it's just a really clunky process. And so thinking about the implications of families using this during times of crisis, in war, when the war in Ukraine started, we started seeing messages from mothers saying, please don't send us formula. We don't have clean water. And so it dawned on me that how babies in that community were being taken care of was really by donor milk, getting passed over to other women who were breastfeeding. So I think we need to think outside of the box for families and give them more options, and ones that aren't shaming. When I got diagnosed with breast cancer, my first thought was, well, this isn't an issue for me because I knew I wasn't going to have children, but it really opened my eyes up to the struggle that other survivors have. And if you've had surgery to remove your breast, clearly you can't breastfeed. And oftentimes that's one of those significant losses that we don't often think about with breast cancer survivors.
Wow, Kelly, your work is needed, especially now, when you think about the wars that are going on in the world, the number of babies and mothers just struggling to survive.
Yep.
It's fascinating that you came up with this idea that uses the GPS system to track somebody in your location. Absolutely brilliant idea.
Thank you.
Now, how do you believe your background in social work has informed and influenced your approach to supporting pregnant women and new moms?
The very first big premise that was really laid on me in graduate school was meet people where they are. And so if we can have the ability in anything we do when working with others to take a step back, kind of turn our brains off of maybe how we would handle it and really just meet someone exactly where they're at, sit with them, hold space. I think that should be the approach for how we deal with anyone. Especially teaching yoga, I'm taught to hold space for other people, that when they come into a class and they sit on their mat, that's kind of their own little desert of safety. And so it's kind of taking that idea into any way I work with people and sitting with them and they're in charge. I'm not the expert. I'm just someone with a lot of experience who has the ability to sit with someone and help them through it.
That. And, meeting people where they're at, that's an interesting approach, because a lot of times when we go in to try and help people, we go in with that savior mentality, and we're looking at things from our frame of reference. So that really brings in that empathetic side of you as well.
Yep.
So what do you find most fulfilling about teaching prenatal yoga and working as a birth doula?
I mean, prenatal yoga is just so much fun. I just taught a class last night and there were 12 women there. 11 of them had a lot of yoga experience. And there was this woman who had kind of put her mat in the back and she was quiet and she was like, I've never done yoga before. And great, that's fine, and as the class goes on, prenatal yoga is not like any other yoga. We sit and we talk and I'll say, Gertrude, how far along are you? How is your body feeling? What are you worried about? And so the women go around and they share. And I think just having women in a space together, they open up and talk about everything. There's no filters, which I think is wonderful. And just one woman opening up and sharing a story about, something physical that's going on in her body, all of a sudden the others are like, oh, that's happening to me too. So it's an instant connection. You don't get an easier pregnancy if you are educated or have money or, whatever the condition is. It's a very bonding time for women. And attending birth is glorious. I have done it enough that I'm a little bit kind of over the female body is amazing and the actual physics of how a baby comes out. But these couples let me attend what is a very intimate thing. We don't have babies every day. You might have 1, 2, 3, that's it, but it's not an event that you do all the time. And so I have really found immense joy in watching couples create a family. I talk a lot about, it's not just that we're having a baby. There's like a whole other soul. There's a whole other soul and spirit that's going to join that family, and it changes everything. And so to be witness to that and watching the power of women in general is amazing. Birth is a crazy event. I love seeing how partners react. They are so supportive, and it's always a big takeaway for me that the partner is just in awe of the mom after labor. It's just, if I could do it for every pregnant woman, I would. It's just the best work I've ever done.
I love it. What a joy to be there every single time.
Yeah.
To actually see the transformation in families.
Yeah.
It's exquisite.
I've also been able to, I usually, if I take on a doula client, they're also doing prenatal yoga with me. And so I have months and months to get to know them. Right. And there's a handful of women who I've worked with who really struggled with some body issues or some history with their body. They didn't always have a lot of faith in themselves. And I think about them a lot. The power of what birth can do to heal a woman is really profound. It's called labor because it's very, very difficult. And so to see someone come out the other side feeling really proud of her body and the fact that she was able to do it, that's great therapy right there.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, could you describe a particularly memorable experience that you've had while supporting a woman through pregnancy, birth, or postnatal period?
Yeah. In fact, this pertains a lot to Share the Drop. I had a woman who had come in for prenatal yoga. She was coming 3 times a week, and she was always on her mat, very friendly, very open, had made friends with the other moms. And she ended up, this was her second pregnancy, but she ended up, her baby was born still at 38 weeks. And she reached out to me right away and said, told me what happened, but she said, it's very important to me that I honor this child. And so she asked me to help her find someone to donate breast milk to. So this sweet woman went home without a baby, had her milk come in, and then she proceeded to pump and give milk for 6 months. She got involved with a milk bank a couple hours away, and then I was able to find her someone who had recently been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she not only pumped her milk on a daily basis, but hand delivered it. And it changed my idea about the need for something like this, that it could have been easier. And if she hadn't known me, who would she have found to help kind of do that? And so that's when the idea started percolating.
And I can just imagine how healing that must have been for her.
Yeah.
To know that she had carried her baby to term, she lost the baby, but she could still help another baby as she was recovering. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a profound story.
She went on and had another very healthy baby, and I see her around town and we still talk about it. And it's a source of pride for her. Loss is very, very difficult. And sometimes a lot of time we don't talk about it enough. No. And I always remind her how proud I am that she talks about it, and she talks about it openly, because everything we go through and we talk about with someone else helps to normalize it. And, especially coming off COVID, everyone was so isolated and kind of it makes all of your own issues kind of come to the surface, but we forget that we're alike, we're all connected. And the fact that she did that, pumped and donated, was great, but I'm the most proud of her because she always talks about her child and the experience.
And, in Africa, we believe that the minute you tell your story to someone else, it's no longer your burden to carry alone. We believe that a problem shared, a story shared, is a story halved.
Yep.
The other person who's listening is now carrying it with you, and it lightens it, and you heal the more you talk about it. But a lot of times women keep it in, they internalize the pain, and then it manifests in other diseases as well. So
yeah,
it's amazing.
And I think there's so much wrapped around pregnancy, like the language of it. We call it a miscarriage if there's a loss. Well, if you make a mistake or you misspeak or you misstep, that's on you. But when you have a miscarriage, the mom didn't do anything, but that's very blaming. And then they don't trust their bodies enough. And the same thing happens with women who attempt to breastfeed. Sometimes it's really, really easy, and a lot of times it's difficult. And we're told that the entire reason you have breasts is to create breast milk to feed an infant. And so what happens to that mom if she can't, and she's doing everything she can to help increase, but it's a very shaming situation. When I owned the yoga studio, I had a weekly lactation support group. It was every Friday, open to the community, and it was packed all the time. Right. And I would see women go in the corners and, bottle feed or, kind of whisper that they were using formula, because we're told like breast is best. That's the most natural thing you're going to do. Just, when the infant formula recalls started happening, there was all this talk about, well, just start lactating, just relactate. Well, that's first of all,
happen. Yeah.
It's not that easy, and not everyone can. And so, we think about gay men adopting babies. They literally, there's nothing they can do to produce milk. So giving them an option is one step in this game of you have choices and you get to make your own choices. And if they go straight to formula, that is their choice. I'm not anti-formula. I don't think breastfeeding is the only way. I just want an option for people who are struggling.
How do you integrate the physical practice of yoga with the emotional and psychological aspects of pregnancy and motherhood in your classes and support sessions?
I have a very strict framework that no matter who's in that room, we're all going to share and we're all going to hold space and it doesn't leave the room. So first of all, creating a very safe space where you can ask any question. I start off every class saying, literally, you can ask me anything. You can ask it to the group. You can pull me aside and ask me, but it goes back to our conversation of sharing, and it helps the community. And there's no right or wrong. So I have a lot of women starting prenatal yoga have done it. They haven't done yoga in the past, but they do it because someone told them it's really great when you're pregnant. And these are the women who are like, is my foot in the right spot? Like, what is this supposed to be? And I always just say, it doesn't matter if yoga, the word yoga is union of breath and movement, right? And so if you are breathing and moving, you are doing it right. If something feels really good, you're doing it right. If something feels productive, maybe it doesn't feel great, but you know that it's helping, stay with it and breathe. Because these are the same things that are going to help them through the process of labor. It's the same things that are going to help them in those early days of motherhood. Being able to stop and take a very deep breath, let it go, and then try again. It's like parenthood is just trying something. It's not working, trying it again and again and again. And so I try to take that, like what I teach them on the mat is the lessons I hope that they take off. I very much talk about labor. And so when we're doing a pose, I get kind of famous for these 2-minute squats, and moms are like, we have to squat for 2 minutes. I'm like, yes, you can do it. And I'm going to do it with you. And I talk to them throughout that 2 minutes of, labor is hard work, and you need glutes, and you need strong legs, and you need a strong attitude. And so you can do anything, average contraction, minute and a half. You can do anything for a minute and a half if you can breathe and if you trust yourself. And so, prenatal yoga is just so much fun. We were just howling last night. We were all just laughing about different things. And the woman who was like, I've never done yoga, said, that was so much fun. And then I got an email this morning and she said, my body feels great. Wonderful.
Oh. Wow. And you're getting this constant feedback.
Yeah.
You're constantly getting the feedback to the results of your work. That's just awesome.
It is. I'm profoundly grateful that I found this work, I guess it kind of found me. But, I have friends that we're sitting and talking on a Sunday, and they're like, oh, tomorrow's Monday and I have to go to work. And I just I never feel like that. I'm excited all the time.
That's awesome. So as someone who travels to train others in supporting women during their childbearing years, what are some key principles or techniques that you emphasize in your training programs?
Confidentiality. You've got to create a safe space, or no one can fully immerse themselves in the work. I talk a lot about not only confidentiality about what goes on there, but, sometimes women lose babies, sometimes things happen, and taking that off the mat into our communities where it's not your story to tell, right? I had a very strict rule with the instructors that taught for me that if a woman comes to class all the time and then she leaves and we don't see her anymore, we don't reach out to her. I get worried about moms. I haven't heard if they've had a baby. I haven't heard if everything's all right, but it's not my place to, out of my own curiosity or to make me feel better, to reach out and call that person, because what if they have a story that they don't want to tell me? It needs to we always let the clients lead. I'm a very touchy person. I hug people. When I'm in class, I walk on their feet and I massage their back, but I have to always have in mind that maybe other people don't like that. And so, having the ability to read the room, and does someone need you to quietly listen, or does someone need you to, loudly applaud them? But yeah, it all goes back to that community piece. And if you have someone, matter if it's on your yoga mat, if it's in birth, if it's training people to do the kind of work I do, you have to love it, or it's not authentic.
I love that. I love it. So how do you foster a sense of community amongst the pregnant women and new mothers who attend your classes or receive your doula support? You know, a lot of young women are not having their mothers near them, their sisters, their aunts, they're in foreign countries.
Yeah.
How do you foster that sense of community? Because it's so important. We don't have it anymore.
It's so important. You know, I was very lucky before because I had a studio. I had brick and mortar where they took prenatal yoga. They came back for lactation support. They came back and took a mommy and me baby class. There was all of these offerings. And so the doors were always open. And I had a very open door policy that, you know, between classes, I wasn't running off and doing things. I was sitting there because the lobby was important. And it was that safe space where people could open their door, could walk in the door and talk to me about anything, or walk in the door and say, do you remember that woman who used to always sit next to me on my mat? Do you remember her name? Because I want to reach out to her. You know, it's a little bit harder when I don't have that physical space, but social media is what it is. I mean, we can find anyone. And so I try to always focus that way on what other local offerings are. Like every day I have 5 emails right now from other local businesses that are supporting women. Like, hey, can you throw this up and share what I'm doing? Because I don't need to be the expert on this. There are other people who are great in their own right doing this. And so every time I do something or I promote someone else, it always comes back to me, right? It's that same thing of just like being kind to the person in the grocery store line because they're just a person walking on this earth just like you. That's always going to come back. And so when I had the studio, I had this feature called, it was Mama Crush Monday. And every Monday I would throw up on Instagram a client's picture and something funny about her, right? Or something sweet, because it is community. And then everyone would be like, I can't wait till Monday to see if maybe it's me, right? I think if we just encourage people a lot more and tell them like, that color looks great on you. Or I was at a party last night and this woman had some fierce, like sparkly boots on. And I just beelined my way over. I said, you look amazing in those shoes, right? It's those things, but also like seeing a mom come into class with a baby and she is tired and offering to hold her baby so she can just rest. Like it's just how you show up for people
things
in every little way.
It is the little things that really make a difference. You're right.
Yep.
Wow. It sounds to me like you wake up every day and this is not work. This is just play.
Yep, it is. I mean, I've been so busy lately teaching, and I'm going to do another training to train other women to teach like I do, and getting on the road for Share the Drop, that there are often times where I'm like, I wish there was 10 more hours today. Do you know how much I could get done? And just trying to like turn that off sometimes, but it just comes naturally. And so I think I was just born to do this kind of work.
Yeah, it definitely found you.
Yeah.
So can you discuss the role of birth partners in the labor and delivery process and how you work with them to prepare for this amazing experience?
I always go, if a woman asks me to be her doula, I have to come meet your partner. That's part of it, because, you know, sometimes it's personality. My personality might not be for everyone. I go meet the partners, and typically they're a little shy, like, what are we going to talk about? And, but I want to hear, like, what's your experience with birth? What are you worried about? What have you heard? And then I do a lot of training with them to lead up to that. I talk to them. I go do like a birth prep class, and I make sure that dads have my numbers, or the partners have my numbers, just like, you know, the mama. But I think my very best work as a doula is if I leave and I feel like I wasn't needed because the partner did so much. Like when I train them for the labor class, it is, how can we physically put our hands on mama during labor and help her? And I make them do it. Like, we're going to squeeze these hips. You're going to be rubbing the back. And oftentimes in labor, it is like a tag team thing. You know, it's really physical for the mother, especially, but attending a birth is very physical work. And so sometimes I am in there just squeezing her hips, and we just tag out. I was just at a birth about a month ago, and we were just high-fiving, tagging out, and dad comes in. I think involving the partner as much as possible, because this is a situation, birth, but also those early days of parenthood, there's not a lot they can do. They can't feed the baby, you know, they can help doing other things, but it's really a mom baby thing in the beginning. And so getting dads to be like, I'll say like, hey, I'm going to come up by your head and help her breathe. Will you just hold this leg? And then they can have eye contact, right? It's just like kind of physically moving a human, being like, hey, come over here. She'll like to hear your voice over here. I always give them mints. I always have mints. I'm like, you got coffee breath. Let's throw, like the things that are really going to bother a mom during labor. This birth I was at the last time, this dad was when I went to go meet with him, he was kind of like taking notes and I could tell he was paying attention. But when we were in labor, he was like, Kelly, I remember you told me this. And he would just stop and be like, do you guys see what my wife is doing? Oh, and he'd be like, honey, great job. And like, you're rocking it. And we were all just laughing, but like we created a space where he was just as important. It wasn't just, hi, mom. And the nurses were great about that. Like, hey, dad, how you doing? Have you had anything to drink yet? What do you do? But you just have to create this safe space. And then, sometimes I'm just like, hey, can you go whisper something in her ear? She needs some encouragement. And then just sometimes I can overhear the sweet things that partners whisper to the mom. And it's my favorite.
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. I can actually see why you do what you do, Kelly.
That's so great.
Incredible. So what advice would you offer to expectant moms who are considering incorporating prenatal yoga into their pregnancy journey?
If you are not a yogi, do not be afraid. I always say prenatal yoga is not the yoga you're going to practice for a lifetime. There's really 3 reasons to do it. So you can physically feel better when you're pregnant, to prep for labor, and to meet other moms. It is really it's a community. That's like, go try it, give it. I say to anyone who wants to, I have a very strong yoga practice. I practice daily. And I always tell people when to start, you can't go once, you got to go twice. Just try it, have an open mind. But, just having the space, even if they don't like the yoga, I have plenty of people who come to me and are like, I don't like yoga, but I'm coming because of this environment.
Yes.
It's an hour. I like a longer class. I teach an 1.5-hour class. It's an 1.5 hours where you can tune out everything else and then learn from the other women in the class.
Yes.
And, and it could be prenatal Pilates, or it could be a swimming group or whatever it is. But if you can surround yourself with other women going through this, you're going to learn so much.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, I could talk to you forever about this topic. Just incredible work you're doing. So I've got your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Before I let you go, I'm curious to know if you have clients in other countries. Are you expanding your services to support women, Australia, New Zealand? Are you reaching women globally now?
I am not at this point. We are tackling the United States kind of city by city. I do have plans to expand. I'll probably expand to Canada first. A lot of it has to do with apps and technology and regulations. But yes, I would absolutely love if this was global. Currently, it's just in the United States. But someday.
Yeah, I can actually see a need for it just in every country. It's not just the US. So
yeah,
fingers crossed it'll get to that point where you can reach women globally. And I'm pretty sure you can still support women globally who are, getting ready to give birth, needing your advice. The internet has really flattened the world in that sense.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your work, Kelly. It's such a pleasure for me to be able to bring experts who are helping women at different stages in their life. What you're doing is needed. Thank you. Don't get tired. Just keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, I know that you're going to be participating in our International Online Summit.
Mm-hmm.
What can people expect? What knowledge, what wisdom are you going to bring to the table?
Well, it's probably going to be very similar to all this stuff we've talked about. But I think the biggest focus will be on building community and what you can do once you know your neighbors, and taking away some of these biases away from informal milk sharing. I mean, it's been going on forever, and it's a way to feed babies, and it's not expensive, right? So yeah, community-based, meet your neighbors, and then just do good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kelly. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The HerStory Circle is a social impact movement focused on women's issues. We talk about business and entrepreneurship, health and wellness, family and relationships, creativity, social justice, spirituality, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Kelly, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the HerStory Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Getrude Matshe, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the HerStory Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making HerStory.